Hello, and welcome back, my lovely Lovecraftians. It has been a while since we visited the story, The Machine, by E.M. Forster, but today we will finish this long-awaited title. Please give a round of applause to Mesotrashed, who this story is dedicated to, my Cthulhu devotee. The Mending Apparatus, by a vestibule, by a lift, by a tubular railway, by a platform, by a sliding door, by reversing all the steps of her departure, did Vashti arrive at her son's room, which exactly resembled her own. She might well declared that the visit was superfluous. The buttons, the knobs, the reading desk with the book, the temperature, the atmosphere, the illumination, all were exactly the same. And if Kuno himself, flesh of her flesh, stood close beside her at last, what profit was there in that? She was too well bred to shake him by the hand. Averting her eyes, she spoke as follows. Here I am. I have had the most terrible journey and greatly has depreciated the development of my soul. It is not worth it, Kuno. It is not worth it. My time is too precious. The sunlight almost touched me, and I have met with the rudest of people. I can only stop a few minutes, say what you want to say, and then I must return. Well, I have been threatened with homelessness, said Kuno. She looked at him now. I have been threatened with homelessness, and I could not tell you such a thing through the machine. Homelessness means death. The victim is exposed to the air, which kills them. I have been outside since I spoke to you last. The tremendous thing has happened, and they have discovered me. But why shouldn't you go outside? She exclaimed. It is perfectly legal, perfectly mechanical to visit the surface of the earth. I have lately been to a lecture on the sea. There is no objection to that. One simply summons a respirator and gets an ingression permit, and is not the kind of thing that spiritually minded people do, and I begged you not to do it. But there is no legal objection to it. I did not get an ingression permit. Then how did you get out? I found out a way of my own. The phrase conveyed no meaning to her, and he had to repeat it. A way of your own, she whispered. But that would be wrong. Why? The question shocked her beyond measure. You are beginning to worship the machine, he said coldly. You think it irregulous of me to have found a way of my own. It was just what the community thought when they threatened me with homelessness. At this, she grew angry. I worship nothing, she cried. I am most advanced. I don't think your irregularness, for there is no such thing as religion left. All the fear and superstitions that existed once have been destroyed by the machine. I only meant to find out a way of your own was. Besides, there is no new way out. So, it is always supposed, except through the vomitaires, from which one must have an ingression permit. It is impossible to get out. The book says so. Well, the book is wrong, for I have been out on my feet, for Kuno was possessed of a certain physical strength. By these days, it was a demerit to be muscular. Each infant was examined at birth, and who promised undue strength were destroyed. Humanitarians may protest, but it would never been happy in that state of life which the machine had called him. He would have yearned for trees to climb, rivers to bathe in, meadows and hills, against which he might measure his body. Man must be adapted to his surroundings. and must he not? In the dawn of the world, our weakly must be exposed to the mouth against, and in twilight our strong will suffered euthanasia. But that the machine may progress, that the machine may progress, that the machine may progress eternally. You know, that we have lost a sense of space. We say space is annihilated, and we have annihilated not space, but the sense therefore of. We have lost a part of ourselves. I determined to recover it, and I began walking up and down the platform of the railway outside my room, up and down until I was tired, and so did recapture the meaning of near and far. Near is a place in which I can get quickly on my feet, not a place in which a train or the airship will take me quickly. Far is a place which I cannot get quickly on my feet. The vomitory is far, though I could be there in 38 seconds by summoning the train. Man is the measure. That was my first lesson. Man's feet are the measure of distance. His hands are the measure for ownership. His body is a measureship for all that is lovable and desirable and strong. Then I went further. It was then that I called you for the first time, and you would not come. This city, as you know it, is built deep beneath the surface of the earth, with only the vomitories protruding. Having paced the platform outside my own room, I took the lift to the next platform and paced that also, and so with each turn, until I came to the topmost, above which began the earth. All the platforms were exactly alike, and all of the places I felt were exactly alike. And that I gained by visiting them was develop my sense of space and my muscles. I think I should have been content with this. It is not a little thing, but as I walked and brooded, it occurred to me that our cities have been built in the days when men still breathed in the outer air, and that there had been ventilation shafts for the workmen. I could think of nothing but these ventilation shafts. Had they been destroyed by all the food tubes and the medicine tubes and the music tubes? The machine has evolved lately. Or did traces of them remain? One thing was certain, if I came upon them anywhere, it would be in the railway tunnels of the topmost story. Everywhere else, all space was accounted for. I am telling my story quickly, but don't think that I was not a coward or that your answer never depressed me. It is not a proper thing. It is not mechanical. It is not decent to walk along a railway tunnel. I did not fear that I might tread upon a live rail and be killed. I feared something far more intangible, doing what was not contemplated by the machine. Then I said to myself, man is the measure, and I went, and after many visits, I finally found an opening. The tunnels, of course, were lighted. Everything is light, artificial light. Darkness is the exception. So when I saw a black gap in the tiles, I knew that it was an exception, and I rejoiced. I put in my arm. I could put in no more at first, and waved it around and around in ecstasy. I loosened another tile, and I put it in my hand. Then I shouted into the darkness, I am coming! I shall do it yet. And my voice reverberated down endless passages. I seemed to hear the spirits of those dead workmen who returned each evening to the starlight, and to their wives, and all generations who had lived in the open air call back to me, you will do it yet. You are coming. He paused, and, absurd as he was, his last words moved her. For Kuno had lately asked to be a father, and his request had been refused by the committee. His was not the type that the machine desired to hand on. Then a train passed. It brushed by me, but I thrust my head and arms into the hole. I had done enough for one day, so I crawled back to the platform, went down in the lift, and summoned my bed. Ah, what dreams! And again I called you, and again you refused. She shook her head and said, "Don't, don't talk of those terrible things. You make me miserable. You are throwing civilization away." But I had got back the sense of space, and a man cannot rest in. I determined to get in at the hole and climb the shaft, and so I exercised my arms day after day after day. I went through ridiculous movements until my flesh ached. I could hang by my hands and hold the pillow of my head outstretched for many minutes. Then I summoned a respirator and started. It was easy at first. The mortar had somehow rotted, and I soon pushed some more tiles in and clambered after them into the darkness, and the spirits of the dead comforted me. I don't know what I mean by that. I just said what I felt. I felt for the first time that a protest had been lodged against corruption, and even as the dead were confronting me, so I was confronting the unborn. I felt that humanity existed, and that I existed without clothes. How could I possibly explain this? It was ecstasy. I was naked. Humanity seemed naked. And all these tubes and buttons and machinery neither came into the world with us, nor will they follow us out, nor do they matter supremely while we are here. Had I been strong, I would have torn off every single garment I had and gone into the outer air unswaddled. But this is not for me, nor perhaps for my generation. I climb with my respirator and my hygienic clothes and my dietetic tabloids. Better thus than not at all. There was a ladder made of some primeval material. The light from the railway fell upon the lowest rungs, and I saw that it led straight upward out of the rubble. At the bottom of the shaft, perhaps, our ancestors ran up and down a dozen times a day, and their building, as I climbed, the rough edges cut through my gloves so that my hands bled. The light helped me for a little, and then came darkness, and worse still, silence, which pierced my ears like a sword. The machine hums. Did you know that? It penetrates our blood. It may even guide our thoughts. Who knows? I was getting beyond its power. Then I thought, the silence means that I am doing wrong. But I heard voices in the silence, and again, they strengthened me. He laughed. I had need of them. The next moment, I cracked my head against something. She sighed. I had reached one of those pneumatic stops that defended us from the outer air. You may have noticed them on the airship. Pitch dark. My feet on the rungs of an invisible ladder, my hands cut. I can't explain how I lived through that part, but the voices still comforted me, and I felt for fastenings. The stopper, I suppose, was about 8 feet across. I passed my hand over it as far as I could reach. It was perfectly smooth. I felt it almost to the century. Not quite to the century, for my arm was too short. Then the voice said, "Jump. It is worth it. There may be handle in the century, and you may catch hold of it and come to us your own way. And if there is no handle, and that you may fall, you are dashed to pieces. It is worth it. You would still come to us your own way." So I jumped. There was a handle, and he paused. Tears gathered in his mother's eyes. She knew that he was fated. If he did not die today, he would die tomorrow. There is not room for such a person in the world, and with her pity, disgust mingled. She was ashamed of having borne such a son. She who had always been so respectable and so full of ideas. Was he really the little boy to whom she had taught the use of his stops and buttons, and to whom she had given his first lessons in the book? The very hair that disfigured his lip showed that he was reverting to some savage type of aviotism. The machine can have no mercy. There was a handle, and I did catch it. I hung, traced over the darkness, and heard the hums of the workings, the last whispers in a dying dream. All the things I had cared about and all the people I had spoken to through the tubes appeared infinitely little. Meanwhile, the handle revolved. My weight sent something in motion, span and then slowly, and then, well, I cannot describe it. I was lying with my face to the sunshine. Blood poured from my nose and ears. I heard a tremendous roaring. The stopper with me clinging to it had simply been blown out of the earth, and the air that made me wake down here was escaping through the vent into the air above. It burst up like a fountain. I crawled back to it, for the upper air hurts, and as it were, I took great sips from the edge. My respirator had flown goodness knows where. My clothes were torn. I just lay with my lips close to the hole, and I sipped until the bleeding stopped. You can imagine nothing so curious, this hollow in the grass. I will speak of it in a minute, the sun shining into it, not brilliantly, but through marble clouds, the peace and the nonchalance, the scene of space, and brushing my cheek, the roaring fountain of our artificial air. Soon I spied my respirator, bobbing up and down in the current high above my head, and higher and higher. Still were many airships, but no one ever looked out of airships, and in any case, they could have not have picked me up. There I was, stranded. The sun shone a little way down the shaft and revealed the topmost rung of the ladder, but I was hopeless trying to reach it. I should have either have been tossed up again by the escape, or else have fallen in and died. Oh, however, there was no time. I could only lie on the grass, sipping and sipping, and from time to time glancing all around me. I knew that I was in Wessex, for I had taken care to go to a lecture on the subject before starting. Wessex lies above the room in which we are talking now. It was once an important state. Its kings held all the southern coast from the Andrexel to Cornwall, while the Wansdyke protected them on the north, running over the high ground. The lecturer was only concerned with the rise of Wessex, so I do not know how long it remained in international power, nor would the knowledge have assisted me to tell the truth. I could do nothing but laugh during this part. There was I, with a pneumatic stopper at my side and a respirator bobbing over my head, imprisoned, all three of us, in a grass-grown hollow that was edged with ferns. Then he grew grave again. Lucky for me that it was a hollow, for the air began to fall back into it and fill it with water fills the bowl. I could crawl about. Presently, I stood. I breathed a mixture in which the air that hurts predominated whenever I tried to climb the sides. This was not so bad. I had not lost my tabloids and remained ridiculously cheerful. And as for the machine, well, I forgot about it altogether. My one aim now was to get to the top, where the ferns were, and view whatever objects lay behind them. I rushed the slope. The new air was still too bitter for me, and I came rolling back. After a momentary vision of something gray, the sun grew very feeble, and I remembered that he was in Scorpio. I had been in a lecture on that too. If the sun is in Scorpio, when you are in Wessex, it means you must be as quick as you can, or it won't get too dark. This is the first bit of useful information I have ever gotten from a lecture, and I expected it will be the last. It made me try frantically to breathe the new air and to advance as far as I dared out of my pond. The hollow filled so slowly. At times I thought that the fountain played with less vigor. My respirator seemed to dance nearer the earth. The roar was decreasing. He then broke off. I don't think this is interesting you. The rest will interest you even less. There are no ideas in it. I wish that I had not troubled you to come. We are too different, Mother. She told him to continue. It was evening before I climbed out the bank. The sun had very nearly slipped out of the sky by this time, and I could not get a good view. You, who had been just across the roof of the world, will not want to hear an account of this little hill I saw. Low, colorless hills, but to me they were living, and the turf that covered them was a skin, under which the muscles rippled, and I felt those hills had called the inaccessible forest to men in its past, that the men had loved them. Now they sleep, perhaps forever. They commune with humanity in dreams. Happy the man, happy the woman who awakes the hill of Wessex. For though they sleep, they will never die. His voice rose passionately. Can you not see? Cannot all your lectures see that it is we, that we are dying, and that down here, the only thing that really lives is the machine. We created the machine to do our will, but we cannot make it do our will now. It has robbed us of the very sense of space and of the very sense of touch. It has blurred every human relation and narrowed down love to a carnal act. It has paralyzed our bodies and our wills. And now it compels us to worship it. The machine develops, but not our lines. The machine proceeds, but not our goals. We only exist as the blood corpuscules the course through its arteries. And if it could work without us, it would let us die. Oh, I have no remedy, or at last only one to tell men again and again and again that I alone have seen the hills of Wessex, as Alfred saw them when he overthrew the Danes. So the sun sets. I forgot to mention that the belt of mist lays between my hill and other hills, that it was the collar of pearls. He broke out for the second time. Go on, said his mother wearily. He shook his head. Go on, nothing that you say can distress me now. I am hardened. I had meant to tell you the rest, but I cannot. I know that I cannot. Goodbye. Bastille stood irresolute. All her nerves were tingling with his blasphemies, but she was so inquisitive. This is unfair, she complained. You have called me across the world to hear your story, and hear it I will. Tell me as briefly as possible, for this disastrous waste of time. Tell me how you return to civilization. Oh, that, he said, starting. You would like to hear about civilization. Certainly had I got to where my respirator fell down. No, but I understand everything now. You put on your respirator and manage to walk across the surface of the earth to a vomitory, and there you conduct the report on the Central Committee. By no means, he paused, his hand over his forehead as if dispelling some strong impression. Then resuming his narrative, he warned to it again. My respirator fell about sunset. I had mentioned that the fountain seemed feebler, had I not? Yes. About sunset, it let the respirator fall. As I said, I had entirely forgotten about that damned machine, and I paid no great attention at the time, being occupied with other things. I had my pool of air into which I could dip, and the outer keenness became intolerable, which would presumably remain for days, provided that no wind sprang up to disperse it. Not until it was too late did I realize that the stoppage of the escape implied, you see, the gap in the tunnel had been mended. The mending apparatus was after me. One other warning I had, but I neglected it. The sky at night was clearer than it had been in the day, and the moon, which was about half the sky behind the sun, shone into a dwell, at moments quite brightly. I was in my usual place, on the boundary between the two atmospheres, when, I thought I saw something dark move across the bottom of the well and vanish into the shaft. In my folly, I ran down. I bent over and listened. I thought I heard a faint scraping noise in the depths. At this, but it was too late. I took alarm. I determined to put on my respirator and to walk out to the well, but the respirator had been gone. I knew exactly where it had fallen, between the stopper and the aperture, and I could even feel the mark that it had made in the turf. It had gone, and I realized something evil was at work, and I had better escape to the other air, and if I must die running towards the clouds that had been the color of pearl, I never started. Out of the shaft, it is too horrible. A worm, a long white worm, had crawled out of the shaft and glided over the moonlit grass. I screamed. I did everything I should have done. I stamped upon the creature instead of flying from it, and as it once curled upon the ankle they were fraught, the worm let me run all over the well, but edged up my leg. I ran. "Help!" I cried. "That part is too awful. It belongs to the part that you will never know. Help!" I cried. "Why cannot we suffer in silence? Help!" I cried. Then my feet were wound together. I fell. I was dragged away from the dim ferns in the living halls and past the great metal stopper. I can tell you this part, although it terrifies me. And I thought it might save me again. I caught a hold of the handle. It was also entrapped. All the whole well was full of the Thanes. They were searching it in all directions. They were denuding it. The white snouts. Others peeped out of the hole, ready if needed. Everything that could have moved they brought. Bushwood, bundles of fern, everything that down we all went intertwined into hell. The last things I saw were the stoppers. Closed after us were certain stars, and I felt that a man of any sort, if he saw the things I saw, lived in the sky. For I did fight. I fought till the very end, and it was only my head hitting against the ladder that quieted me. I woke up in this room. The worms had vanished. I was surrounded by artificial air, artificial light, artificial peace. My friends were calling to me down speaking tubes to know whether I had come across any new ideas lately. Here, his story ended. Discussion of it was impossible, and Vashti turned to go. "It will end in homelessness," he said quietly. "I wish it would," retorted Kuno. "The machine had been most merciful. I prefer the mercy of God." "By the superstition phrase, do you mean that you could live in the outer air?" "Yes." "Have you ever seen round lavatories the bones of those who extruded the Great Rebellion?" "Yes." "They were left where they perished for our edification. A few crawled away, but they perished too. Who could doubt it? And so with the homelessness of our own day, the surface of the earth supports life no longer." "Indeed. Ferns and a little grass may survive, but all the higher forms have perished. Has any airship detected them?" "No." "Has any lecture dealt with them?" "No." "Then why this obstinacy?" "Because I have seen them!" he exploded. "Seen what?" "Because I have seen the twilight. Because she came to my help when I called. Because she too was entangled by the worms, and luckier than I was killed by one of them piercing her throat." He was mad. Vishtashi departed, nor into the troubles that follow did she ever see his face again. Such concludes this chapter of The Machine Stops by M. Foster. M. Foster's story is still really, really holding up to today's values. This was published once again in 1909. It covers the topics of dystopia, open sourced feelings, and even religion and technology. This almost feels steampunk or even a dash of Lovecraftian, I can notice now. The way that the worms were part of the machine, most likely. I'm at a loss for thoughts, which is kind of funny because the whole thing is, have you had any good thoughts lately? I really like that the mother started questioning her own thoughts, and it did give her ideas, but she still is going through her generational trauma of the machine being the book, the way of life that she has to live, but seeing her own flesh and blood become a whole different person than the one she raised. to question the machine, to question God, and this mysterious woman who got killed by the worms. What are these worms? How are they playing into this? What will happen during the homelessness? We'll find out next time, my lovely Lovecraftians. And once again, this is dedicated to Mesotrashed.